A ruling party celebrates a legal victory, but a nation remains somewhat divided. The Constitutional Court allows Turkey's AK Party to continue in power, but can it balance the demands of the masses with the demands of the elite? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Sami Zaidan. Well, Turkey has a history of making life difficult for those the elite suspect of mixing religion and politics. On Wednesday, the country's top court narrowly decided against disbanding the ruling party over accusations it was undermining secularism. But the court did cut off millions of dollars in state aid to the party. The decision averted political turmoil but exposed the vulnerabilities of Western-style democracy in Turkey. Mohammed Shukayr reports.
There was no hiding the tension in Turkey's Supreme Court. The Chief Justice criticizing the country's political parties for bringing their problems to the highest court in the land. Worry among the ruling party members that the judge would force them to disband was soon replaced by relief. They were given a stark warning and were deprived of major financial subsidies.
We have decided to issue a strong warning to the AK party and slash their official funding by half. The party has to learn the lesson well.
The Prime Minister was ready to back down and suggest that he would not pursue his previous policy of imposing Islamic rule. Even before the ruling, he admitted that he, as well as other politicians, had made mistakes. He also expressed a readiness to turn the page.
The AK party will continue to protect the principles of the secular republic, and the priority now is to achieve a national reconciliation.
Turkey's hopes that it will be considered as a future member of the EU are not linked to the hijab issue. The EU has not raised it as an area where reforms are necessary. The EU has warned, however, that in democracies, parties are voted out of power at the ballot box, not through the courts. A cabinet reshuffle is expected in the near future to assure the secularists that Erdogan is extending a hand of dialogue to them. The latest ruling may well have averted not only a political and economic crisis for Turkey, but possibly a military one as well. Banning of the party would have blocked the appointment of a new chief of staff of the Turkish army early next month. The AK party now needs to convince at least half the judges of the Supreme Court that they misjudged the party and they should give the AK party another chance. Convincing millions of skeptics may prove to be an even greater challenge. Mohammed Shukayr for Inside Story.
Well, joining us now are our guests in Ankara, Haluk Ozdalga. He's a member of parliament for the ruling Justice and Development Party. Also in Ankara, Taibe Guleg. She's the deputy chairman of the Democratic Left Party, who in 2007, of course, formed an alliance with Turkey's largest opposition group, the Republican People's Party. And in Milan, Angelo Sant'Agostino. He's a Jean Monnet Professor of Economic Integration at the University of Brescia and author of the book Turkey, a Candidate Different from the Others. Well, they say ladies first, so let's start with Taibe. Do you think this court ruling was based solely on legal considerations?
Well, we have to, of course, respect the decision of the court. All along, that's what we've been saying. And
but was it really ever from the start a simple legal matter? Or was it highly politicized?
Look, there's... there were many things in our constitution and in our law that the chief prosecutor felt were not in accordance, were not being held up by the Justice and Development Party. That's why he put forward this indictment, and the court case was started. It is a very tricky, it is a very sensitive issue in our country because of the current situation that we're in, and I think the verdict needs to be interpreted quite correctly as well. But all along we've said, once the court case was put forward, that it's actually wrong to comment too much on it and to go ahead and respect the decision of the court and have full faith in our legal system, which we always have had. But the decision, having said that, the decision does need to be interpreted correctly. It was actually a warning, I think, to the ruling party to really pay attention to making sure to obey what our constitution dictates, and also to basically not to increase this polarization in the country, not to look at it simply as a refusal of the case, but really as a warning, a criticism,
right.
And to look at and it's very important to read all the different interpretations today and by the different
we'll talk more in
society.
part two. Sorry, Taiba, if I can get in there. We will talk more in part two about how perhaps the AK Party will interpret and react to that ruling. But if I could turn to a member of the AK Party and ask Haluk, is this ruling a sign, in your opinion, of the maturity of Turkish democracy?
Yes, that could be interpreted in that way. Well, the final outcome of the Constitutional Court process has been to reject the indictment of the chief prosecutor demanding closing of AK Party, and this ruling is a great relief, not only for our party, for the AK Party, but for Turkey, for our country.
Okay, but the fact that the court still came very close to actually banning your party, is that a bad sign? I mean, it kind of says that the courts still hold the ultimate power over elected governments, doesn't it?
Yes, but I don't think such details are so important. The most important thing is the final outcome of the ruling, which is the rejection of the demand to close AK Party, and that has been a great relief for our country, because any other ruling such as closing would have extremely negative consequences for Turkey, both in economical terms, in political terms, and Turkey would be affected very negatively in economy, especially considering the very unfavorable conditions in the international markets that could result in Turkey paying a heavy economic price, and a severe political crisis would be triggered, most probably lasting over several years. And the last but not the least, EU-Turkey relations, which is already less than perfect, would be hit badly, probably very, very badly. So the outcome, of course, many people will make different interpretations and will point to the number of the votes coming from 11 judges, etc. But these are details.
I'd like to take things to Mr. Angela now and ask the question that, looking at what Judge Kulic said when he announced the court verdict, he said basically blamed the politicians for not coming up with legislation that would prevent the courts from having to deal with this sort of issue in the first place. Is that a good sign? Is it a sign that Turkey has progressed beyond the point of what some are calling constitutional coups?
In these years, since 2001, 2002, when entered the Erdogan government, the country has gone through an intense process of reform, constitutional reform and legal reform. 7 packages have been approved, and the outcome of this is that now Turkey is a candidate negotiating country. So democracy has progressed in Turkey, and the European Union, for this reason, started negotiation. Then came the Cyprus issue.
Okay, so democracy, if I may jump in there, democracy may have progressed, but is justice blind in Turkey? Or, as some commentators are saying, is justice wearing virtual goggles at this point in time, virtual reality goggles?
But my perception of this, that, the perception that we have in Europe out of this sentence, is that has been the best issue we could expect, because otherwise this would have caused political instability and economic instability in the country.
All right, Taiba,
On the
if I could move to Taiba on that point, how much was international relations, particularly relations with Europe, a factor in this decision, do you think?
Look, I think this decision was, we respect, as I said, our courts, it's a state of law with an independent judiciary, and we respect very much the decision that they took. I don't want to think in any way that other factors were involved, even though many people tried to mix these in. What's very important to see here, I think, is first of all, in trying to present, and I see this quite often when we go to Brussels or to talk to EU circles, it's not just the ruling Justice and Development Party that has done a lot of EU reforms, whether it's in terms of constitutional changes or these famous EU reform packages. In fact, it was my party, the party of Prime Minister Ecevit, Democratic Left Party. In 2001, we made the constitutional change amendment that made it more difficult for political parties to get closed down. We changed about 34 articles of the Constitution on the road to further democratization in our country, and passed 3 of the most, I would say, actually, they were the more ambitious reform packages on the way to EU reform, including the removal of the death penalty and a huge revamping of the civil code, which was outside of the reform packages. So
let me ask you this then, Taiba, if I may.
Would your party that have been committed
further support perhaps ARC party efforts in the future to completely end this saga of banning parties in Turkey?
Look, we have already made these difficulties, and our party is one that in its past, in its actually origins, suffered from the difficulties in the past of having parties closed down. So that's how we were formed, in fact, in the 1980s, as a reaction to all of that. However, and we do not wish for this to happen in democracies, however, having a majority of votes also does not mean you can do anything and everything you wish. You can just look out for the rights of maybe one group of people, not almost at the expense of others. You have to embody and encompass everybody, just like the speech that was given by the Prime Minister after the elections last year. So I think it's very important to move further ahead with further reforms, not stalling on EU reforms and not having a la carte EU reform, picking and choosing the ones you want, but to do it with I would say harmonization and having the input of all political parties and sectors of society, not really moving forward with just what a certain group or just a party thinks. And I think that's what's created a lot of tension in this country.
All right, well,
so it's important to recognize this.
You made some really interesting points there that would take us nicely to our second round of this discussion. But it is now time for a short break. When we come back, we look at whether further chapters of confrontation are being recorded here or a new model of coexistence. Back in a moment.